But I wanted to ask Adi, since you have been doing a lot of the contributions, like Jack said, on designing the light client for on IBC, can you explain a little bit more what that light client model actually means and what makes it so unique and what makes it also secure in that context, resistant to exploits and all these kind of things?
Let's see. So yeah, I should say that I was just part of the team who did it. I was actually not focused on the light client. I was just basically at the interface with it. But you could, if you were to describe what the light client does and its interface, you could say that the light client encompasses all the security assumptions about a foreign chain. So light client tells you what you can trust about the foreign chain, and the way you parameterize the light client is the way you parameterize your assumptions about the foreign chain. So if you're Hub and you're communicating with Osmos, and you have a light client on Osmo on the Hub for Osmos, that light client has certain parameters, and that parameters say for how long each validator set within Osmosis can be trusted, like the trusting period. It tells you what is the trust threshold, whether is it a validator set, a threshold out of the validator set of 1/3 or 2/3, and so on. So it actually overlaps with the actual security assumptions of Osmosis itself. Because whenever the validator set on Osmosis does something, they agree with one another on proceeding with a certain block or not. And when they do that, they come to disagreement by relying on threshold assumptions, 2/3 and so on. And those are also encapsulated in the light client. Is this roughly speaking what you had in mind?
Yeah. But so what I want to get down to, on very like simple terms, I'm just gonna ask this like direct. Is something that we've seen on other chains where you have 100 million, 200, $600 million exploits, is that something that would technically be possible that somebody could exploit IBC one day? Is that, and how likely would that be?
I think those are, well, there's two answers to that. One is there may be a bug within a chain that is completely, has nothing to do with the light client, has nothing to do with IBC, that could allow such an exploit. And that could be something like a different question, and that's possible, of course. And then there's the other part, which could touch on the light client, but in this case, it wouldn't be the light client that is to be blamed. It would actually be the chain that you communicate with. If that chain forks, then everything is off the table. Then it's like a race for the source chain to understand that there has been a fork, and then the foreign chain could actually double spend, and they could do, they could send to two accounts the same money, and in that case, it's a race for the source chain, in this case Hub, to understand that there has been a fork and to freeze its light client for the Hub, for Osmosis, and if the Hub wins that race before Osmosis forks and double spends, to put it briefly, then such an attack would not be possible. But it is, in theory, feasible.
Okay. Charlie, do you have any comments, or Jack, on that, and any thoughts?
So I'm sorry, I was having connection issues earlier, so I missed the initial question.
About basically how likely it would be that IBC could be exploited.
I see. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think like the primary fear behind that question, I would say, of like why or when can we expect like a wormhole on IBC, or when can we expect something like that? I would say like the design of IBC inherently makes those types of attacks impossible, in the sense that those specific attacks were either faking a validator set kind of signature, if you have like a multi-sig type of proof controlling what the bridge recognizes as like a real transaction, you're going to be able to spoof that a lot more easily if you don't have like a light client architecture. So the way that IBC is designed does kind of give us the highest security guarantee. It's like, rather than having to trust the bridge to tell you, okay, this is a real transaction, you just have to trust the consensus of the chain you're interacting with. So, obviously if there's like problems on the chain, like it's anyway going to be a problem for your asset. But at the sense that you don't have to trust the bridge in order to trust the asset, that's a way that IBC design kind of mitigates for that type of attack. And the other type of attack, which we've been seeing a lot, are attacks on smart contracts. And this is kind of like what happened with a lot of these Solana hacks, is that with smart contracts are very complex. It's very difficult to really have a good audit for them, and being able to, submit some sort of input into a smart contract, which will trick it into understanding that there's a different state, is a lot more easy to do than something like spoofing, like what Adi was mentioning, where you literally have to fork the whole chain and create like a super fast interaction with it's a lot easier to hack a smart contract. So I would say that because IBC doesn't focus on an external root of trust, namely this set of validators for the bridge, and because it's not putting validation in the smart contract setup, it is just inherently going to be a lot more secure than these types of bridging mechanisms.
Yeah.